Hey, this is Kyle Benedict with MISO BIM.
This tutorial topic is on curtain walls, and this course is considered intermediate level. This video is part 1 of 2 showing how to create and manipulate curtain walls in Revit. Part 2 focuses on editing the components and visual aspects of curtain walls. Okay, for starters, there are 3 main components to the glass walls in Revit: grids, panels, and mullions. These are grids, which you can tab to. The glass part are considered panels. And finally, these individual components are your mullions. These objects combined equal a curtain wall. You can't see me, but I'm putting that phrase in air quotes because, as most of us know, there is a difference between a curtain wall, a storefront, and simply exterior glazing in the real world. But in the Revit world, they are essentially the same. So let's delve into this world of curtain walls. There are many levels to the complexity of curtain walls when it comes to really customizing them, but before I get too far, I will mention the basic principles of drawing walls remains the same here, so I won't show you how to draw a wall again. As you can see, these are already drawn. Revit curtain walls are also not limited to exterior applications. I will focus this video on creating some interior glazing for some conference rooms you would find in a typical office setting, like so. As most of you will have in the out-of-the-box Revit template and even some of your company templates, you'll see the 3 options I mentioned before. We've got a curtain wall, we've got exterior glazing, and we've got the storefront. Again, these are all basically the same, but at various levels of development. So let's discuss these in detail, starting with the most basic, which is just curtain wall. This is simply the equivalent of one glass panel. There's no grid or layout assigned to it, no mullions. Starting with one of these is probably best if you want to do a very unique and custom mullion pattern. We'll get to that later on. The next wall type is exterior glazing. As you can see here, it's just like the curtain wall, except in this case you have a basic grid established throughout the wall. This might be the best bet for interior applications, as those usually have minimal amounts of mullions. And finally, we have the storefront, which includes not only grids, but also mullions along those grids. And this is the most developed curtain wall type. Now that we know the basic parts and differences between them, let's look at how we can actually control them. When it comes to curtain walls, everything you see visually is completely determined by the curtain grid. There are 2 ways to control the curtain grid, either through the properties or by drawing it yourself. So let's look at that now. I'm going to use the storefront as the example so you can see the results instantly. You will also see controlling these will be through a combination of the type properties as well as the instance properties. Alright, I'm going to select this curtain wall, storefront, and personally I like to duplicate the curtain wall and rename it in the way that it will be used before I do any sort of editing to that wall. So in this case, I've already got our standard storefront, and this one I'm going to change and duplicate. We'll just call it storefront 2 for now, but I would be more specific in your projects, such as office storefront, exterior storefront, interior storefront. You get the idea. Alright, so let's go through some of these type properties real quick. Under construction, we can tell the function of the wall. Alright. Automatically embed, when this is checked, that means we can draw a curtain wall right inside an existing wall. Let me do that real quick. And it will automatically cut it out of the existing wall. I'll do multiple views for you. Alright, so when I'm drawing this in plan view, I'm going to draw it right inside this wall here, and it automatically cuts it right out of that wall. Now, if I choose storefront 2, and that's unchecked, you'll see that it draws it inside the wall, but they're both in the same place. And to remedy that, you would need to use the cut geometry tool select the one wall and select the other wall, and then it will cut it out. So that's what the embed option gives you when creating the curtain walls. So automatically embed, if that's checked, you can draw a curtain wall right inside an existing wall and it will cut it right out for you. Okay, moving down, we have curtain panel. This is the default glazing or whatever panel type you'd like to see. As you can see, I've created a couple already in here, but a panel could also be solid as well as clear, and you can even have empty ones. And you can even put a wall type inside your curtain grid as well. So a lot of options. Next is the join condition. This controls where mullions will show seamlessly. So if you want your vertical grid to be continuous, then you would select that there. You've got a couple other options as well. So if we wanted horizontal, we wanted this mullion to go straight through here, we would choose the horizontal grid. Alright, moving down to the actual grids themselves. This is going to be the most integral part of your wall types. Your horizontal and vertical grid is what controls what you're going to see and the spacing between your mullion grids and your mullions. Under the layout drop down, we've got a few different options. For your vertical grid, remember that's going this way, you can have no layout. We can have a fixed distance, so we can tell it to be 5 feet, and they will be 5 feet spaced all the way through until it gets, unless you have an uneven one at the end, but we'll talk about that in a second. A fixed number, if we choose this, you'll see that becomes grayed out, and we will control that over here in our instance properties. I'll get to that in a minute. Maximum spacing and minimum spacing. Pretty self-explanatory as well. You give it a number and it's not going to exceed that, or it will be at least that. Same options for the horizontal grid. Moving down, we have our mullion types, and you'll see with the storefront, the mullions are automatically created as we drew the wall because these are all filled out. If we go back to just the curtain wall, which was the most basic, none of these options are filled in yet, and that's why it's just a single piece of glass. So back to the storefront, we've got some existing mullion options, a couple rectangular sizes, circular mullion. For an interior application, we'll probably want to go with a smaller mullion size, but we'll talk about that later. Selecting these ahead of time in your wall type will automatically create them as you draw the wall. And everything below is just some identity data. Alright, since I did duplicate this, I will select some smaller mullions. Alright, our border type I'm going to leave as the larger size. But our interior type, I'm going to go with the 1 inch. Hit OK. And you'll see that automatically adjusts the mullion size. The important thing to know about mullions is that they are based on profiles. So the possibilities of your curtain wall, the way it looks, are pretty much endless. It could be any sort of shape or size. As long as you create the profile of it, you can import it into your project. The only trick to mullions is any odd shape geometry might not join the way you'd hope in certain areas. So while you can create any type of profile, it might not always look correct depending on how the joins and miters work. Okay, I'm also going to go back in to edit the type of this storefront 2 to be, our vertical grid will be a fixed number. Okay, so in this case, let's go back over to this one so you can see a little better. Turn this to storefront 2. It's got the interior 1 inch mullions. Now you'll see this is grayed out because we have a fixed distance for that, but since we changed this to number for the vertical grid, Now it's an option in our instance parameters. So it's currently at 5, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's your interior vertical grid, and you should always have one more panel than that number. So just be cognizant of that as you build your wall and what kind of look you're going for. So I'm going to change that to 10. And now I have 10 vertical section grids and 11 panels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm also going to choose the horizontal grid to be continuous on the border. Okay there, and now that is nice and smooth along there. Some other things to know as you're drawing these in our instance parameters is your justification. So that's asking you where the vertical grid, in this case, or horizontal grid, will terminate. If we do justification from the beginning, it's where you first drew your wall, and then that spacing is going to be from the beginning moving out. This is a little more applicable for when you have a fixed number. So let's do it on this one. This again is 5 feet in the spacing. Justification from the beginning. If we change that to the center, pull this out a little bit. With it being maximum spacing, it's going to not exceed this number, but space them evenly. If we tell it to be a fixed distance, say 4, hit OK. Now it's moving out 4 feet from the outside, so that could possibly leave us with 2 odd-shaped sizes on each end because we're going from the center out. If we do that from the beginning, it's going to be 4-foot spacing all the way until the end, and then you'll just have one odd-sized panel at the end. And of course this works in reverse by choosing end as well. That'll shift the odd panel down to this side. This concludes part 1 of curtain walls. Be sure to view part 2 on curtain walls, where we'll show you how to customize these walls even further.